Never shall innocent blood be shed, yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God. You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today, and you will tell of it later. All eyes to the front. You must watch, dear. It'll all be over soon.
Now you will receive us. We do not ask for your poor or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. May swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
How far are we going to take this, Star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution, the depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Hey guys.
Hello, Nick.
Hello, Nick.
I'm having some crap tonight. So
Well, maybe if you go no camera, that'll help it out a bit.
Yeah, I hope so.
You have
my
notes?
battery's gonna probably crash in 20 minutes.
You have notes?
I got some stuff to share. I could do this.
Do you want to?
I'll start up some crap right now.
Oh, whatever. I'm
I can do
good.
that. All right.
Oh, you want to jump right in, I guess.
Yep. I'll start hard early. This is on his biography of Robert Louis Dabney, was probably the most preeminent theologian in the Americas, especially during the 19th century. He was chief of staff to Stonewall Jackson, and he was at several different seminaries. Anyways, this is his biography of Stonewall Jackson, and here he talks about the sentiment of Southerners, like myself. History will someday place the position of these Confederate states in this high argument in the clearest light of her glory. The cause they undertook to defend was that of a regulated constitutional liberty and of fidelity to law and covenants against the licentious violence of physical power. The assumptions they resisted were precisely those of that radical democracy which deluged Europe with blood at the close of the 18th century, and which shook its thrones again in the convulsions of 1848. The agrarianism which, under the name of equality, would subject all the rights of individuals to the will of the many, and acknowledge no law nor ethics save the lust of that mob, which happens to be the larger. There you go. Dabney and Equality. Now, there is a certain equality which Dabney would affirm, but Dabney was a classic natural law theologian. He believed the Bible. He was Reformed and Presbyterian in theology, but his principles were pretty much the same across all Christendom. He believed in the hierarchy in the family. He believed also in a certain hierarchy in the church and a certain hierarchy in the commonwealth. He believed in being in subjection to those over you. Now, what form of government he had advocated is something else. Nonetheless, he advocated submission to civil magistrates. Dabney is in, yeah.
I remember a quote from Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI. The truth is not determined by a majority vote.
Oh.
That sounds exactly what Dabney is saying here. The consensus, the mob, which happens to be larger, that's a consensus. That's a majority vote, which is essentially ruling.
Or by Nietzschean power.
And here's the other thing, just as a bit of background. The war between the states. The Southerners say this was not about slavery. It was about rights and the states' liberties, and the North was forcing their economic model on us. And the consensus right now, which is, the winners write history, say, oh, it was all about slavery. Bullshit. The Northerners, the Northern boys, all those Irish immigrants did not give their lives to free
No.
anybody down. It was not about that. It was about a whole bunch of other crap. Okay, that was a side issue,
Uh-huh.
but it was not the predominant issue at the time. That's not why we were fighting.
And the South was a Christendom. And Dabney's whole point, he has a book called A Defense of Virginia and the South. I highly recommend it. Here, I'll put my camera on for that. There you go. A Defense of Virginia and the South. Good book. It's about the cause of the South and the war and the philosophy and the history of certain trades and how the South actually was against the trade, international trade, but certain long-nosed Northerners were for it, or hook-nosed Northerners were for it. Anyways, he makes the South's point is, look, it's in the Bible. The Bible does not condemn that estate.
So, in a
Deal with
nutshell,
it.
to kind of bring it into current, tariffs were a big thing back then. So, in order to protect the fledgling industrial economy of the U.S., they enacted tariffs. So that kept out the foreign goods and raised the cost of those. So then we could produce those domestically and sell them at a competitive price. Interestingly enough, all those industries were up north. So whatever price was paid, it was paid by the people in the north, but they benefited from it. The people in the south had to pay those higher prices for goods that were manufactured up north that they could have actually imported it from elsewhere at a much cheaper cost. So there was an exploitation that was going on, and the Southerners were pissed off about this. Am I right?
Well, I want to interject here because, it's all fine and good to talk about, what the South was doing and why they were doing it. Yeah, I know, right? But the reality is that the economic model of the South was dying before the war started. And people say, oh, that was the state doing this. And okay, yeah, but also
That's
no,
true.
because the high agrarian society. I mean, part of the reason that the South lost the war was they built their rail networks incorrectly, because the cities were not in the right places to get the rail lines didn't stop in the right cities at the right places to get the materiel moved for the war. So the economic model of the South was probably going to die anyway. And so if you want to play it forward, if the South had won, very likely the United States would have actually been an economically backwards power for much later. And World War II, we probably would not have been able to win, which would have been very bad for us.
Yeah. Okay. So the economic model of the South was dying, which meant they were not prospering, which meant they didn't have the money, which meant that they regretted having to pay these high tariffs.
Oh,
they
sure.
didn't really have the money.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, you can't point to one thing and say that's the cause.
Yeah.
But
It's really
their constitutional liberties were destroyed through despotic power.
True enough.
Well, I think we're seeing some of that today.
Liberties were destroyed by despotic power.
Well, I mean,
I actually think the institution would have died off anyways within 100 years anyways. So,
yeah, well, the machine technology,
a lot of the South thought that as well.
Well, yeah, and the machine technology would have eventually, as it did, get to the point where keeping human labor would have been too expensive. Because you have to feed humans.
By the time 1880 80s, you had steam engines.
Yep.
They just displaced a lot of the need for human labor. And by 1910 or so, you started having big gasoline tractors, which even lowered the need for labor even lower. And a steam engine a steam traction engine cost a lot of money.
The gas ones didn't.
The gas ones were expensive, but not nearly so.
Go ahead, Nick.
And the North figured out wage slaves, like the Irish, were a lot cheaper than having to pay for all the crap that they had to do down south. They just had the name of being freed.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that this comes up because the concept of the internal combustion engine and putting an ice on a tractor is actually considered to be one of the causal factors of the Great Depression. There were so many laborer jobs, even amongst the North. There were so many laborer jobs that were replaced by the internal combustion engine that the economy literally had to redesign itself for this new future. I mean, we weren't going back.
Are we living through that about right now? Are we about to live through that again with AI?
No. Just so you guys know, I live in North Dakota. Grew up in Minnesota. The oldest, steam engines, they started out 20 horsepower, and they ran separators, threshing machines. Still took a lot of labor to pitch the bundles into the machine, but man, that was a huge advantage. Then they got a little bit bigger, and they improved the gearing, and they could pull plows. 6, 8 bottom plows. They got a little bit bigger than that, but they cost a lot of money. They took a lot of fuel, and they were kind of dangerous and just big and bulky. Then you got into the big gas tractors, prairie tractors. These things were humongous. They had rear wheels that were 8-9 feet in diameter, and a big 4-cylinder, maybe even a 6-cylinder engine. And they just chugged along. They didn't move fast, but they would pull 10, 11, 12 bottom plows. Big open field. You couldn't turn them very fast or easily. But, okay, you have a gasoline tractor that's pulling 10, 12 bottoms. Do you know how many bottoms a man behind a horse can pull? 1. And the guy was walking behind that with a hand plow. You start pulling 10, 12 bottoms. Holy shit, that's a 10-fold increase in productivity. Yeah, you're going to displace a lot of labor.
And we did.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
I'll give Dabney was, if not fair, he did give this caveat. He was definitely against the radicals of the egalitarian Jacobins, those the reign of terror, that kind of were early Marxists and stuff. But he does give this caveat in his defense of Virginia. He says, nor does the Southern cause demand such assertions as that the condition of master and slave is everywhere the normal condition of human society and preferable to all others under all circumstances.
Well, Nick.
Yet, nonetheless.
Oh, go ahead.
Hierarchy, his whole point was it's not necessarily an evil institution, although he admits that the problem is that the fallen nature of man is full of sin. You will find all sorts of abuses in every institution of man. Some more flagrant in others in history than others. But nonetheless, because of sin, you will find abuses in these institutions.
The average typical Southerner did not own other people,
No.
was not invested in that as a institution that he depended on for his livelihood. That was rich people who were doing that. And the world was changing even there. So were they going to go to give their lives for something, an institution, a way of life that didn't directly benefit them? I don't think so. There were a lot of other issues that they were going
Well, they
to
also
war
viewed their
about.
state. They also viewed their state as their first loyalty rather than this more 20th century, late 19th century concept as the United States is a nation instead of are a nation.
Well,
There's a phrase.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that there's a parallel between what he's talking about the natural order and the hierarchy, and that we still see it today. But I mean, you guys have seen the TikToks of these adult daycare jobs, right? We now have to come up with work for people who are not smart enough to do the actual work. And we need to come up with guardrails for them, right? We need, here's your life, here's how you set it up, here's what you do, we'll help you do it, etc. People talk about how there's modern day indentured servitude. Do not get me started on H-1B, but it is basically the same thing, right?
Yep, it is. Well, it's like what the Irish came over here in the 19th century. Same crap.
We haven't actually gotten rid of it. We've relabeled it, and we've loosened it. It is no longer what you might term chattel. We don't do chattel anymore.
What are chain gangs? What were chain gangs?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Prisoners is a little different. But we
according to the Bible, the prisoners were actually considered slaves.
Oh, okay. I mean, in terms of right, in terms of modern day rights, right? We ascribe prisoners even less than them. Well, but you see what I'm saying, right? It's like so we're
just obfuscation,
right? But the point being is that we didn't get rid of it. We renamed it something
exactly
corporate appropriate.
Oh, like in what I call family law. It's not kidnapping anymore. What do we call it? Custody.
Yeah, we didn't get rid of slavery. We just renamed it as child support.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Exactly. You get my drift. You're getting my drift.
Because, hey, if you're a man paying child support, you've lost your freedom at a whim.
Yep.
You can't see your kids. If you have a restraining order, you've lost your right to bear arms. If you don't comply, you go to jail. They take the proceeds of your income, of your labor, without regards to how much you're making. You go into arrearage, and they charge interest on it. There is no escape. Now, if you run from it, let's say to another state, they'll catch you and they'll put you in jail. Sounds like slavery to me.
Yep, it is. And these judges and lawyers should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, including jail time, monetary value to be charged against them, if not execution for kidnapping.
Yeah, well, okay, right. That's not going to happen. It's not.
I'm working for it.
doesn't matter. It's perception that matters.
No.
Okay, Nick, you get accused of wrongdoing by an ex-wife. The truth doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the
Because
least.
they're oppressed. They're oppressed
Well,
because they're
it's
lower
what
higher.
everybody believes. Now,
Uh,
we're not going here, but I'll tell you something right now. The whole Charlie Kirk thing. Everybody's focused on trying to find the truth. Who did it? Is there ties to anyone else? That doesn't matter. Stop looking there. Turn around and look at the people. Just listen to what the different factions are saying, because the threat is not coming from whatever happened. It's coming from the reaction of the people who are looking at it. Always turn around and look at what are the people reacting? What are the people thinking? What's up? What is the mob mentality? Because that's your threat.
Steve, by the way, is doing an impromptu preview of next week's stream. I'm putting it together, but as you can tell, he has some opinions on the matter. So yeah, that's next week's stream.
I don't mean to derail you, Nick. Continue.
All right. Well, we're going back to Dabney. Oh, where do we get this? What's his view on equality? I got to share screen. There we go. This is him on the 10 Commandments. If it loads up, I'll gotta blow it up a bit.
I see it now.
Oh, I'll fit to width. Is that a little better?
Yeah.
All right. So he says, as the first table began, that which is fundamental to all religion. Let's talk about the 10 Commandments, the two tables of the law. He says, the pointing out of the only proper object of religious service. So the second table begins with that duty which is fundamental to all social duties, and the most important of all, subjection to domestic authority. I must here again remind you of the rule of interpretation laid down at the outset, that a whole class of duties is enjoined and of sins forbidden under one prominent specimen. So we understand here, under the example of filial duties, all the relative duties between superiors and inferiors in the family, the church, and the commonwealth are included. So that's the three basic units of society, three basic hierarchies established by God. Continuing, Dabney says, not only the duties of children to parents, but of servants to masters, pupils to teachers, people to rulers, and church and state are here implied. If these most important classes of social duties are not intended to be included in the precept, then they are nowhere in the Decalogue. There's no other precept where they can be fairly embraced. Can we believe that the summary so omits what the subsequent scriptures so often enforce in detail? The including of all these under the fifth commandment will seem far more natural if we remember that the original form of government in the old world were all patriarchal, in which the father was the head, priest, and prince of all his descendants and servants. The family was no doubt the germ out of which civil institutions and the organized church grew. The Jewish nation was just now passing, in part, out of this patriarchal form, and many of its features were retained in the Mosaic government. How natural, then, to an ancient Israelite to represent the general idea of civil and ecclesiastical superiors under the term parents. Servants, who were usually slaves, were on much the same footing in ancient society with children. Kings were called fathers. That's 1 Samuel chapter 24, verse 11. Prophets were generally addressed as fathers by the young men entrusted to the religious instruction, who in turn were called sons of the prophet, 2 Kings 2, verse 3 and 12. Many duties are reciprocal in nature. Obligation on one side implies a correlative obligation on the other. Thus, the duties of inferiors imply the reciprocal duties of superiors. Under this commandment, then, are included the duties of parents towards their children, masters towards servants, rulers towards subjects, church teachers towards their charges. Thus, we find that St. Paul, in the former part of the 6th chapter of Ephesians, which may fairly be taken as his exposition of the fifth commandment, begins with the duties of children towards parents, but follows it up immediately with the duties of parents towards their children. And after instructing servants, proceeds immediately to instruct the masters. We feel, therefore, fully justified in giving the fifth commandment the general scope assigned to it in the Catechism. And he quotes the Catechism, that's the Westminster Shorter Catechism. The general scope of the fifth commandment is the performance of those duties in which we mutually owe in our several relations as superiors, inferiors, or equals. 2. It is under the head of the Decalogue the important scriptural doctrine, the civil magistrate, and duty of citizens should fall, which is the subject of the 23rd chapter of our confession. That's the Westminster Confession of Faith of 1646-47. But this is a subject of so much importance that I reserve it for a separate discussion in the senior course. The details of other duties, inferiors and superiors, may be seen so fully stated in your catechisms that it would be mere repetition to recite them here. Oh, so what do you guys think of that?
And Nick, what word is missing in everything you said about everything Dabney wrote? What word is missing?
Equals.
No, he used equality.
Oh.
Something else in our modern world that's always talked about that's missing here.
You tell me.
Anybody catch it? Rights. Nowhere.
Oh, well, there are
Dabney talk about rights.
Yeah.
He talked about
That's the
duties.
last thing I'll bring up. But he does talk about rights, but under a certain usually he's criticizing those who claim rights, but he does say rights insofar as you're obligated by God to obey his commandments. So it's a duty.
Okay. You see my point here. He's stressing duties. Everybody in our modern world talks about, well, it's my right. You're trampling on my right. Dabney doesn't stress that at all. It's all about do your duty, whether you're a superior or an inferior. And those are case dependent. Okay, even if I'm a superior to some, I'm still an inferior to others. So, yeah. But just do your duty.
So what do we see here? Dabney is Dabney for, equality across the board, smashing the hierarchy, smashing the patriarchy?
No, he's know your place, do your duty.
Yeah.
And we're just building kind of on what we're building on what we talked about last week. Same concept. I mean, I didn't know Dabney said this. I didn't take it from Dabney.
Chief of Sinners has it correct. He says, freedom is the ability to know and do that which... Oh, my computer's messing up again. Okay. All right.
Yeah, if we lose Nick randomly during the stream, guys, we'll just blame his computer.
Yep. The not so quality in.
Oh, you're naming them. Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Well,
It's supposed to
okay,
be an
so
upgrade. It's like a downgrade.
to me, this concept of duties, I mean, it's been on my mind a lot lately for personal reasons, but I think we've particularly as a culture, we've spent so much time talking about this concept of rights. And yes, there are natural rights. The right to defend yourself, for example, is a natural right, and I will take that one to my grave, as the guys know, uh, based on our conversations. But because we've decided that rights are the only thing that matter, we've expanded the concept of rights to include the right to take another person's labor. I'm going to say, I'm going to use labor here as a fill-in for, taxes is a form of theft of labor. Demanding that people perform a task, like this is particularly common in the medical field, in the healthcare field. Well, you have a right to healthcare, so I have a right to demand that somebody else give me the service I demand. Well, no, you don't. Not naturally. But in all of this, we've forgotten that for even for the natural rights that we do have, there are duties, or another term, responsibilities, that go hand in hand with those rights. Okay. If you want the right to self-defense, you have the responsibility to maintain yourself and your tools and your house in such an order that you can affect that right, and that maintaining the tools doesn't impinge on the rights of others. I'm trying to be YouTube safe here. Right. So we've spent so much time yammering about rights as a culture that we've forgotten that the more rights that every right has a duty associated with it. And if you start concocting rights out of nothingness, you have to sit here and come up with some concordant duty to match that right. And with some of these things, you can't.
Hold on. If I am a poor person and I have the right to social benefits, Social Security, SNAP benefits, Section 8 housing, heating assistance. That's my right to get that.
Okay.
What's my duty to correspond with the receipt of these benefits? What duties do I have?
I have some off the top of my head if you'd like me to list them.
I would, yes.
Okay. So first, you have the duty to not do drugs. The purpose of these programs is not to maintain a druggie. Okay, so that's one right off the top of my head. Another one, you have the duty to either to look for work such as to get off those rights, because your fellow countrymen are paying for those rights. So it is your duty to them to get off as soon as possible. If you can't, say we're in a downturn, you have then a duty to either volunteer your time and your labor, let's say at a church, helping other people, or using that time to come up with a new product or service that does sell during the recession, and thereby generating money for yourself that you can get off the benefits programs. Benefits programs like that, we built them on the idea that the people who got on them would be working to get off them. And so that is your duty, is to try and get off the program, or do something, to my mind, this isn't the way it is done, but or do something that, is generally beneficial to the society that is paying for you to be on those programs. I don't know, Steve, what do you think?
Argument against this.
Okay.
These are my rights. You talk about duties, I'm going to say, nah, and you can't make me.
Well, okay, Steve, here's what I would say to that.
Based on what?
Well, yeah. Well, here's what I would say to that. I cannot take away your right to self-defense from you. I can't. That's why we call it a natural right, right? You can always defend yourself, even if the law says you can't. Okay. But if you decide to go, nah, you have to give it to me and I don't have to do anything, I can take the right away from you. And then it gets into the
Oh, but
question
the
of,
law's on my side. You know what? You couldn't kick me out during COVID because we had you couldn't evict someone. So I don't have to pay my rent. I can just live here. You can't even have the sheriff evict me. I'm here. Tough.
yes, and look at how society has since responded to what that's happened. Yes, they it's what you're talking about is a short-term mindset. They're saying, "Oh, well, I can do this to you right now." And to which I would say, "Yeah, you actually could, and the law is on your side right now." But in doing so, and we're seeing this with the right, on the right side of the political spectrum, people are talking about like one of the most popular topics for Zoomers right now is, oh, let's just delete Social Security. Just gone, just delete it. And the millennials are kind of like, hell yeah. Well, here's the problem for the boomers. In 2028, the millennials and Zoomers will dominate the vote. And so they can then the millennials won't do this right away because in 2028, the millennials won't realize they have the power to do this. It'll actually be a project for the 2030s. But you will start to see all these rights getting deleted. I don't think that going forward, this idea that the state can just decree that you can't get kicked out of your apartment is going to survive much longer. The backlash against that already was enormous. So, yeah, you might.
They don't even own the apartments. They didn't make rent. They should get kicked out. It's called theft. Let's go
I
back
agree.
to actual freaking law. It's called
Right.
theft. I don't give a crap you can't pay rent.
I made every one of my rent payments during COVID. I made every single
Me
freaking one of them.
too.
Even when I was unemployed, I made every single one of them.
What, do you want a medal for that?
No, my point is I did my duty.
Oh, good comeback. I was just going to say, no, you don't get points. You don't get brownie points for doing your duty. It's
That's
just
true.
a duty.
So
That's true.
I think we're confusing these rights with see, this is of the libertine rights because just because you can assert something where it's a natural need, therefore you think you're automatically should be granted it and the state should defend you in having it. It's a little more complex than that. Yes, you have the right to work, to pay your rent, but you don't have the right to steal property and failing to pay rent. Yes, you have a right to your wages. And no, the robber, just because he's a certain color, does not have the right to take your wages from you physically or through the internet just because the government decided to penalize you defending yourself more than the actual crime committed against you.
Well, yeah,
If that makes sense to anybody.
well, here, let me put this in terms in practical terms. The government, let's use California. We had the government has this San Francisco. We'll use San Francisco. They have this problem with looting. So that's theft, exactly what Nick is talking about. So what does the government do? They say, because they can't keep up with it, and their argument is, oh, we don't have enough police to do this. But really, their argument is, but it's not that big of a problem anyway because these businesses have insurance. So what do? They tell the police to stop responding to calls of theft. And then they raise the statutory minimum for even what the police can respond to. oh, well, now it has to be $950 instead of $500 or whatever it was before, right? So what they've done is they've said, oh, well, we think that the crime is less important, is less, the damage being done to the person is less important than not harming the criminal. I think that's kind of what you're getting at in practical terms there, Nick.
All right. It's
This
the point
again,
also that the radical democracy, the radical view of natural rights is that mere physical ability means that you have the right to do it, hence the need for a fictional social contract, which can nowhere be demonstrated in history or its foundation found, to restrain it.
well, this amounts to a right to equality. So if I have a right to equality, I have a right to the same lifestyle, to the same products, to walk out of the store with the same amount of stuff that a rich person does. Even though the rich person, or middle class, whoever, the person with money who actually worked for that money, since I'm equal to them, even though I don't work, I still get the same outcome. So this again comes back to an issue of equality.
So who's going to
Misunderstand.
permit? So who's going to permit or allow this equality? Oh,
Everyone.
there's a hierarchy.
Who's permitting it? I'll tell you exactly
Uh-huh.
who. The man and the patriarchs. Because when it comes right down to it, it's got to come down to the men who allow it to happen, because the men have the monopoly on force.
Mhm.
So if the men allow it, if they're weak men listening to their wives or whoever else, they're allowing equality and promoting equality, which is a heretical concept.
Right. Dabney, again, the stuff I showed you, he's enforces a hierarchy in family, church, and society. I have an actual extended essay I'm going to share at the end. Well, here in a minute. Hopefully we'll get through most of it, but I'm going to give you an excerpt from what we're kind of talking about, and it'll kind of transfer to the article. This is the end of his essay on women's rights, women. Yeah, he condemns feminism too. Okay. It says God's judgment on an infidel democracy. It says this will be consummated, that destiny to which so many gloomy prognostics point, as the allotment of the North American continent, to be the accursed field for the final illustration of the harvest of perdition, grown from the seeding of the dragon's teeth of infidel radicalism. God gave the people of this land great and magnificent blessings and opportunities and responsibilities. Duties, they might and should have made it the glory of all lands, but they have betrayed their trust. They have abused every gift. Above all, they have insulted him by flaunting in his face an impudent, atheistic, God-defying theory of pretended human rights and human perfectibility, which attempts to deny man's subordination, his dependence, his fall, and native depravity, his need of divine grace. It invites mankind to adopt material civilization and sensual advantage as their divinity. It assumes to be able to perfect man's condition by its political, literary, and mechanical skill, despising the gospel of Christ, which is man's only adequate remedy. It crowns its impiety by laying its defiling hands upon the very forms of that Christianity, while with the mock affection of a Judas, it attempts to make it a captive to the sordid ends of mammon and sense. Must not God be avenged on such a nation as this? His vengeance will be to give them the fruit of their own hands and let them be filled with their own devices. He will set apart this fair land by a sort of dread consecration to the purpose of giving a lesson concerning this godless philosophy, so impressive as to instruct and warn all future generations, as the dull and pestilential waves of the Dead Sea have been to every subsequent age the memento of the sin of Sodom. So the dreary tides of anarchy and barbarism, which will overwhelm the boastful devices of infidel democracy, will be the caution of all future legislators. And thus women's rights will assist America to fulfill her great mission, that of being the scarecrow of the nations. There you go.
Okay, so is America becoming the scarecrow of the nations?
It could be.
American hegemony is kind of is waning. Instead of a unipolar world, there are a lot of countries wanting a multipolar world where the U.S. does not control everything. And there's a lot of animosity around the world at some of the stuff, the culture that we're peddling to the world. They don't really like it. Maybe we are becoming the scarecrow to warn others away. Don't do what we did.
Well, when you extend equalism or egalitarianism or equality to all across the board, you invite disintegration of a natural order, you invite chaos, you invite essentially the destruction of a civilization. And right now, our civilization has been living on the baggage of a Christian moral society for about maybe 100 years, arguably since the 1960s, if you want to be more optimistic. Yeah, there's some people kind of holding the line, but the numbers don't lie. There's a massive problem. There's a massive disparity of property, wealth. Again, I'm not arguing for equality, but there's a problem of stewardship, I would say, passing on to next generations, raising up next generations. There's a problem in the numbers of stable families, and even birth rates, and problems in demographics as well.
Okay, there
Unless
are
it's
two
fixed,
worlds here. There
yeah.
is just the world of the ultra elite, the puppet masters. They don't give a shit about equality. They don't believe in that. They're pulling the strings from way on top. They're in control. And we just are not allowed to really know who they are or what happens or how they're doing it or who's pulling the strings. It's just the way our world works. I mean, Donald Trump has even got masters, people who pull his strings. Okay, now the rest of us, we believe in equality, but we're not living equality. Equality
No,
means the superiority of the victim. There's a victim hierarchy. The bigger the victim is, the more you get to control things. So it's an equality is actually lived out is an inversion of equality. It's anti-patriarchy because you're putting the lowest or the least capable, in charge of everything. Um, is there something in Isaiah about the women and children ruling?
Right, Isaiah 3:12. Yeah.
Gee, are we living
Yeah.
that, Nick?
Oh, we definitely are. We have an inverted hierarchy, and the spears we have are generally tyrants. I'm not saying everyone, but generally tyrants. They ignore natural law. It's all about donors. It's all about politics, parties, etc. They actually do not give a crap about the inferiors under them. And likewise, you see the inferiors, a lot of them have no respect for the superiors. Yeah. They each have a duty towards one another, but no one wants to fulfill it. So, chaos.
True enough. What's the sentiment of the under 30-year-old men? The followers of Charlie Kirk. What are they all about? Okay, I'm twice their age, so
Hey, they know
you're
they've been
closer.
trampled down by. Look, we all know we've been trampled down by H-1Bs. We've been trampled down by feminism, DEI. We know we have not been raised to have a stable family or job. We know a house and perhaps even a long-term family with kids that's not ripped away with us through the divorce courts is may not even be attainable. Yet a lot of us want that. A lot of the under 30s want a stable family and kids and be able to have a house, a stable career, and all that, but they know it's probably not attainable, and it has been stolen from them by the tyrannical government, which are H-1Bs, their libtard legislation of DEIs, and the boomers that never raised them correctly.
But I want you to know, all you younger men out there, I'm not retired yet. I'll be 63 in a month. Got a couple more years to work. Then I'm going to retire and take my Social Security. So you guys better keep working and paying your Social Security, your FICA taxes, because it's time for me to collect. So do
Ah,
your duty.
oh yeah, we know we'll never collect.
I don't care about
We will
you.
never collect.
It's all about me
Yeah,
and my retirement.
yeah, it's a boomer mentality. I think the best thing would be to strip all Social Security from single mobs and boomers. But
Oh, 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 you're so mean.
I don't care. I really don't care, Margaret.
Oh, okay.
All right,
You know
I'll get
what?
on to this essay on
I'm
civic.
just pointing this out because I want to bring it home to all you young guys out there. I understand.
All right.
Hey, do what you want to do. I'll be fine.
This is Dabney's lectures, volume 3, chapter called Civic Ethics. He says, passing now from social morals of the family to general ethics of social duties, we meet the fact that the civil government is the appointed regulator and guardian of all these. Hence, these duties take the form of civic morals. And our rights and duties as citizens meet us at the front. The discussion naturally begins with the question: what is the moral ground of my obligation to obey the magistrate whom yesterday, before he was inducted into office, I would have scorned to recognize as my master, to whom I must now bow in obedience? He says 3 opposing theories have been advanced in our day in answer to this question. The first answer is that I am bound to obey him solely because I have consented to do so. This is a theory which founds the government in a social contract, which first stated by Thomas Hobbes and of Malmesbury was made popular among English liberals by John Locke and introduced by the French by Rousseau's famous book, Les Contrats Sociaux, became the ruling philosophy of the French Jacobins. This apprehends men as the first insulated individuals, human integers, all naturally equal and absolutely free, having a natural liberté to indulge, each one his whole practical will as a lord of creation. But the experience of inconveniences of the natural mutual violences of so many hostile wills with the loss of so many advantages led them in time to consent voluntarily to the surrender of a part of their will's natural rights and independence to gain a more secure enjoyment of the remainder. To effect this, they are supposed to have conferred and to have entered into a compact with each other, covenanting to submit to certain restraints upon their natural liberty and to submit to certain of their equals elected to rule in order to get their remaining rights protected. Subsequent citizens entered the society by birth or immigration are supposed to have given their sovereign assent to this compact expressly, as in having themselves naturalized, or else impliedly by remaining in the land. The terms of this compact form the quote or the organic law or constitution of the Commonwealth, and the reason why men are bound to obey their equal or possible inferior as a magistrate is simply that they have bargained and are getting their quid pro quo. Many writers, as Burle-Marchais and Blackstone, are too intelligent to suppose or claim that any human persons ever rightfully existed, in fact, in the independent state described, or that any commonwealth actually originated in such an optional bargain. But they teach that such a non existent compact must be assumed as implied, as virtually accounting for the origin of civic obligation. Thus, Blackstone gives a chapter, page, and paragraph quote. He says, us but to us, it appears that this species of legal fiction is a poor basis for a moral theory and is no source of natural right and obligations. So basically, the social contract is a legal fiction. It has no actual basis in experience or
Okay,
objective basis.
I have an observation here. That whole thing was an exercise in justification and rationality that someone understands that, oh, yeah, I'll give up some of this supposed freedom for the protection for the greater good. It's a rational decision. Bullshit. People don't think rationally. Therefore, the entire thing is it just a flying up your own asshole mental exercise.
Yes, exactly. This never happens. It never did happen.
People are not rational and do not make rational decisions and understand what they're doing. If you if you abide by the authority and do your duty, you're not rationally thinking why you do it. You just do it because that is the order. I don't have to rationalize, well, why I pay my taxes. Well, you see, I pay my taxes because I'm giving up some of my freedom so I can have greater freedoms. Bullshit. I do it because of force.
Yeah. Then we get to the second theory here. The second theory may be called theistic, tracing civic obligation to the will and ordinance of God our Creator. It answers that we are bound to obey the civil magistrate because God, who has the right as Creator and sovereign, commands it. This command is read by all Christian citizens in sacred scripture, which says the powers that are ordained of God. And whosoever resisteth the ordinance of God. It is read again in the light of natural facts and reason. These facts are mainly two: that God created man as a social being, not just a mere individual, right? Okay. Which is so true that without social relations, man would utterly fail of reaching his designed development and happiness, and indeed would perish, and that man's personal appetences ever tend to engross to himself the rights of others. Selfishness is ever inclining to infringe the boundaries of equity and philanthropy. Hence, it is the ordinance of nature that man shall live in society, and that man in society must be restrained from injuring his fellows. And there are no other hands than human ones to wield this power of restraint. We are thus taught as clearly as by Scripture itself that the Creator ordains civil government and wills all men to submit to it. The same argument may be placed in this light. Men are rational, moral, and responsible creatures. Righteousness is their proper law. But personal selfishness tends perpetually to transgress that law. Hence arises the necessity of restraint. Thus, the only alternatives are submission to civil government, which is such restraint, or an ultimate prevalence of aggression, which would destroy the very ends of social existence. Witness the wretched and savage state of all human beings who are wholly without any form of government. Here we are met by such a cavil, which is expressed by some and which has evidently embarrassed not to be introduced into this discussion because God and his will are theological facts. But since this inquiry is concerning natural right and secular relations, it ought to be decided exclusively upon natural data without importing into the other premises from the alien field of theology. To this I answer that in reality there is no fact among the data of moral science so purely natural as God. As soon as the mind begins to reason on the phenomena of nature and experience, it is led in one direction to God, at least as immediately and necessarily as it is led in other directions to gravity, causation, conscience, free agency, or any other natural fact. God is not only one proper factor, but the prior one in the philosophy of our moral nature, seeing he created it, and his nature is the concrete standard of moral perfection, and his preceptive will, the expression of that nature, is the practical source and rule of all our obligations. He is therefore not only the first, but the essential and most natural of all the factors in every question of natural right. To attempt to discuss those questions, omitting him and his will, is just as unreasonable as it would have been in Newton to discuss planetary astronomy and the orbital motion of the planets, leaving out all reference to the sun. And this is justified last by the remark that in constructing our theory of civil obligations, we introduce God, not in his theological relations as Redeemer, but in his natural relation as creator and moral ruler. Yeah, there we go. It is the Christian doctrine of God in his relation to the world that he makes the foundation of legal and political science. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. There's more stuff there. It says the theistic scheme then traces civil government and the civic obligation to the will and act of God our sovereign, moral ruler, and proprietor, and that he from the first made social principles a constitutive part of our souls and placed us under social relations that are as original and natural as our own persons. These relations were first of the family, then of the clan, and as men multiplied of the commonwealth. Follows thence that the social government in some form is as natural as man. If
Hold
asked
on.
whence, okay.
Hold on. Is that true?
Yes.
Is this part of our makeup?
Yes.
Okay, well then why isn't it working? Why do I
Yeah.
have to assert my authority as man, patriarch, Why do people defy this and subvert this natural order all the time? If it is imprinted on their soul or a constitutive part of their souls, why do we need enforcement?
Because of sin. Okay, we still need civil government before the fall. I would still say that we'd have had before the fall civil government, yet we wouldn't have had it wouldn't have had a restraining function because sin wouldn't have had entered into the world. You would have had natural superiors and inferiors and worked in harmony, right? But because of the fall, you need the threat of the sword to carry it out because of rebellion, which is because rebellion comes from sin.
Okay, I'll go with it. But I'm going to bring up the next point. But continue on with it follows thence.
Sure. It follows thence that social government in some form is as natural as man. If asked whence my obligation to obey my equal or possible inferior as civil magistrate, an answer is because God wills me to do it. He has an infinite right. The advantages and conveniences of such an arrangement may illustrate and even reinforce the obligation. They may not originate it. Civil government is an ordinance of the Maker. Magistrates receive place and power under his providence. They are his ministers to man. This theory, pushed to a most vicious extreme by the party known as legitimists, is the third, which has had some currency. These advocates of the divine right of royalty teach that while government is the ordinance of God, its first form was the family, in which the father was a sovereign. And this is the type of all larger commonwealths. Every chief magistrate should therefore be a king, holding the same sovereign relation to their subjects, which fathers hold to their children. As in the patriarchal clans of Scripture, the right descended to the eldest son and carried with it the headship of the clan. So the right to reign is hereditary in the king's eldest son. To deprive him of it is to rob him of his rightful inheritance. Subjects, if discontented with their king, have no more right to replace him by another chief magistrate elected by themselves than minor children have to vote in a new father. If the hereditary monarch becomes oppressive, the only remedy for the subject is humble petition and passive obedience. There is no right of revolution. Oppressed subjects must wait for their release by divine providence. In support of this slavish theory, they quote the precepts of the apostles, Romans 13, 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. He says, this servile theory I refute. Men in society do not bear to their rulers the proportion minor children bear to their parents in weakness, in experience, or folly, but are generally the natural equal of their rulers. I think generally needs to be emphasized here. Nor are the citizens the objects of an instinctive natural love in the breasts of kings, similar to that of parents for the children, powerfully prompting a disinterested and humane government of them. The pretended analogy is utterly false. Second, whereas divine authority is claimed for royalty, God did not give a regal government to his chosen people, Israel, but his preference was to make them a federal republic of 11 cantons. Yeah, I'm not sure if I buy that myself, but when he granted a king at their request, it was David was not the son of Saul, but is elected by the rulers of Israel. It's true the prestige of this enabled him to nominate his immediate successor Solomon, who is yet not his eldest son. After Solomon, the elders of Israel were willing to elect his son Rehoboam, but upon ascertaining his tyrannical purposes, they elected Jeroboam. And the reader must note that they were nowhere in Scripture blamed for this election, nor for their secession. And Rehoboam, who had been elected by 2 tribes, when proposing coercion, is strictly forbidden by God. So Jehu, elected by divine direction, was not a successor of the house of Ahab. Third, in the New Testament, does not command us especially to obey kings, but the powers that be. Scripture thus makes the de facto government, whatever may be its character, the object of our allegiance within the limits of conscience. Okay. All right. It says the power, and it is fatal to these advocates of divine right of royalty that the actual government with St. Peter and St. Paul and Peter enjoined Christians to obey was neither regal nor hereditary. It was a recent usurpation in the bosom of a vast republican commonwealth, still retained nominal forms of republicanism. Talks about Julius Caesar and Octavius, blah, blah. Keep going down. All right.
I have a comment here.
All right, keep
This
going.
his understanding here is distinctly Protestant and Calvinist, because that's his theology. My perception or my beliefs are different because I'm Catholic. So I think there's a religious divide here in this third point.
All right. I think Dabney in his systematic theology, he does prefer republicanism, but he does make the assertion that God does not decree the type of government that we must submit to, but merely.
Yeah, I understand that, but he's kind of denigrating the king, passing on authority to the firstborn son, and the lineage aspect. We could debate this for a long time. I'm just pointing out.
Right. I
Difference
actually don't have a problem with kings and lineage. I have a problem with tyrant kings and failing to depose kings that are not able to perform their duties. So I'm kind of a modified. I'm okay with a strong Republican government, but I'm more of a modified monarchist. So.
Well, yeah, I'll agree with you there. The king, as long as he's leading good, I'm fine with that. If he's not, the people need to bring out their pitchforks.
Lords should do their job and say, get the dukes and those under him say, hey, what's the problem here?
True enough. Yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
has to be some check. Yeah. People shouldn't have to live under a despot, but usually they do have to live under a despot because he gathers so much power in the police state and so much persecution. Yeah, generally, there's not much people can do about it.
Well, there's not much you can do about bureaucratic controls that hate its own people, which England has now.
Or even under the supposed democracy of the U.S., I still don't have shit for power to correct any of the injustices or evils. And you know what? Even all the young men who say, hey, this whole marriage thing, it's a load of crap. It's not just, okay. There's a significant percentage of men who believe this. Can we do anything about it?
No.
Not so far.
That's why at least you don't have as much destabilization usually. I mean, you can go through a bunch of kings real fast or emperors real fast. You saw in the late in the 1st century AD, they had like a year of 7 emperors or something, or 2 years. whatever it was, where the Praetorian Guard and one died, one fought each other, Praetorian Guard kept taking another out, another took power. Okay, so you can have problems with monarchs, but you can have greater change to fix the problems of society, greater relations with a stable economy and stable laws versus them always changing by the whims of the mob and the latest electorate.
Hey, I'm just curious. Is Plutarch still with us?
I'm here.
He
I'm
said
here.
he's back.
I had to take a phone call. Sorry about that. I'm actually just listening. You guys are knocking it out of the park right now. So
Hey, we can handle it without
I
you.
actually,
But hey, I like your input too.
well, I have to
think Dabney's.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well,
Okay,
I was
well,
just
I think Dabney's. Okay, you go ahead, then I'll answer. It's not a big deal.
all I was going to say is I have to listen for a little bit to get back into the flow, and you guys moved on from what we were talking about. Although, Steve, I was going to say something like what Steve said about the problem with monarchies is eventually you need to remove the monarch because there are bad monarchs, and so you need a way to do that.
Correct.
I think it would be
Correct.
interesting. Well, okay, here's another observation. Have we noticed that the United States has moved towards investing more and more power in the president? With all the executive
orders and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there is a natural order to having a strong centralized leader, but and the Roman Empire was actually it was a very long-lived empire for a reason. It's because they didn't just have the strong leader; they also had the Senate, and the leader did have to work with them. But in times of stress, the leader could just come in and do things, and so there might be some validity to that model. The Romans weren't stupid.
I think republicanism works better for smaller nations and government where the people when the people are basically have a same mindset, they're generally a moral people and have the same identity. It
Homogeneity.
kind of works. Yeah, but once you start getting bigger, yeah, there bureaucratic tape gets way too large, and I'm not saying it doesn't have its place in gathering information and doing duties, but it has a confused direction because it changes every which way by the whims of the mob or the whims of the latest electorate or even the president. Is he going to be there for 4 years, 8 years, 4 years, and 4 years somebody else, and another 4 years? And policy drastically changes internationally, and our trade and economy keeps changing. And by the way, you can't actually correct society of its great abominations because you have all this bureaucratic politicians that stand in the way of being able to enforce the moral law and rectify society.
So, there's two courses of action. If you have a diverse population, you must use force. If you have a common ethnic group, similar moral principles and culture, and adherence to principles, then you don't need to use force. You're using culture. As we become more diverse, as in the U.S., you cannot have you don't have any common beliefs anymore. Therefore, the only way you can govern is by use of force. Dictate. And aren't we seeing that? When I was growing up, we had the police. Okay, I lived in a rural area of the U.S. Yeah, as a young man, he kind of got into trouble. you'd get a stern talking to, and if you were really bad, he'd go talk to your father. Things should be taken care of on that local basis. Okay. And there are a lot of guys my age who did all kinds of wacky shit when we were young. Now, you can't do that within the community. You know, the officer talks to your dad and says, hey, this kid was driving 80 miles an hour down the road, and he just got out of a party out in the woods, and he had 3 beer cans in the back of his car. You need to do something about your son, or he's going to be a problem. That kind of shit happened 40 years ago. Now, you throw the book at him, you take him and, let the legal system here deal with it. It's now ruled by force. And that's where we're going. It's not a good thing. I liked it. Diversity is not our strength. Let me just say that clearly.
I agree. Only too much diversity. Actually, Stephen Wolfe in his book Christian Nationalism talks about the problem of diversity and a common ethnos, a common people, a common heritage, versus you can't have a stable, cohesive, high trust society if everybody's so diverse and has different ethics, different religion, different skin tone. Though not trying to make it about that, but it's something there, right?
So, Plutarch, do you
Yes,
know
sir.
who Martin Armstrong is?
I've heard the name. I don't after that I don't.
Okay, he's a financial guy. Very, very smart. He's been around for he's probably close to 80 now, but still he does podcasts. He'd swear he's in his 60s. He's advised governments around the world. Anyway, wicked smart guy. And he says, part of the reason America is great is because of discrimination. Discrimination is a good thing. This is his concept, and I kind of agree. Why? Well, when the Irish came over, or any ethnic group, but we'll focus on the Irish, they came over and they were discriminated against. So they had to conform to the greater culture to advance. How did the Polish or the Germans, what were they discriminated against? Hell yes, they were. You had to learn English, speak English, go get a job, and adhere to the general culture of this nation, and you became American. Yeah, we don't give a shit. You can have your own culture back in your ethnic neighborhood. Not a problem with that. But when you're dealing with the outside world, you got to conform. And okay, then they integrated and there's no problem. Right now, we are not discriminating. You can't discriminate. Therefore, you can't force people to behave in the normal, acceptable manner to integrate in the cohesive general culture. So I think discrimination can serve a purpose because it's like collective shame or a force. It's a societal force causing people to conform and become good citizens.
Yeah, and this really has nothing to do with even, the we always want to make it about race, but this really has nothing to do with that because the Germans, the Irish, the Poles, they all came over and they were all forced to assimilate. And you say, oh, well, all Northern European. And there's actually a really cool study on why that is. But there are other cultures that have successfully integrated as well. In fact, there are large blocks of ethnically South American that do not consider themselves South American, and when you talk to them, you can barely tell that they are. Right? Okay, they might have slightly darker skin and dark hair, but that's about as far as you get. They
Hey,
speak like
the
Americans. They speak like,
Mexicans,
yeah,
the Hispanics are doing exactly that.
yeah,
Okay, they were kind of discriminated against.
for a while.
They have their own culture when they're
Yeah.
by themselves, but they integrate very well and they adopt the overall culture when they're out in the wider world. It works great. I work with one or two Hispanic guys. They're fine. I have no problem. I like them.
Meanwhile, in Texas, we have Indians building Hindu temples, and I saw another one today.
Fuck that. Tear them down. Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
We know where Nick stands on this. Nick, I saw
They
another one
deserve to
today.
be torn down and scattered, torn down, crumbled into bits, burned and thrown into the ocean.
Okay, I saw another one for you, Nick. Northland, Texas. So somebody paid for a giant billboard sign wishing Narendra Modi best birthday wishes or something like that. I forget what it actually was, but that was posted on Twitter today. That is not assimilation. Under any, you do not say that.
Get the F out. Get the fuck out.
That is no. It is not assimilation.
We don't want you here.
It's not assimilation to pay homage to the leader of a foreign country, to your supposedly adopted country. It's not okay.
Okay, well, let me refine this. You can do that privately, but you should not impose your views on the larger culture. Wake up, dumb shit. The reason you moved here was for the American culture and what it represents. And now you come here and you're trying to change the culture that was the reason you moved here for. Pull your head out of your ass. You can have your temple, whatever the hell, over there. But when you're interacting with us, show some respect for the culture that you willfully chose to move here for the benefits that we represent. And you know what they are because you moved here. If you didn't like the way we live, you shouldn't have come here.
Pretty much.
Do not share a common religion, do not share a common ethic. They do not share and they always hold on to the ability to go back home. So they can get prosecuted here and say, you know what? I'm just going to take all my money and run back to wherever else, and there's no consequence for them. In fact, a lot of them do this.
Particularly we're not seeing a lot of it right now on the Asian subcontinent because they tend to come here legally, and right now everyone's focused, rightly so, on illegal immigration. But think about all the stories that get published about these illegal immigrants doing these vile, heinous things, and then people are sitting here defending them Well, you can't send them back because they will experience hardship in their home country. No shit, Sherlock. It's either that or I make them experience hardship here. I'm gonna send them home so they don't have to pay to impose hardship on them. You are actually doing them a favor by sending them home, and you're doing your fellow countrymen a favor. Why? The taxes are too high. No shit, Sherlock. Why might that be? Oh, right. We can't send anybody back to the country that they came from because something that because it might hurt them. Yeah, well, they shouldn't have fucked around
Cry
in the
me a
United States
freaking
to begin
river.
with.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck around and find out.
All right. I need to get back to Dabney now. I'm sure he'd agree with a lot of what we said without the expletives that we use, but he's a much more refined man than us. I'll give him that. Okay. He says, so he talks about the Jacobin error on equality. Starting with, by their fruits you shall know them. He says, I require the student to look at Hobbes. So this is from his lectures we actually gave in the class. That's why he says that. I require the student to look at Hobbes, deducing with his iron logic from this theory of the social contract his conclusion that government must be Leviathan, the irresistible giant among all the weaker animals. He proves that on his theory, government ought to be absolute. For the theory recognizes neither responsibility nor allegiance to a common heavenly Father, perfectly impartial, equitable, and benevolent, the ruler of rulers, the protector of all his children, who will call all their oppressors to a strict account. To the Jacobin, the Commonwealth is the only God beyond which there is no umpire, no judge, no avenger. Again, upon this theory, the supreme rule of Commonwealth action has no standard whatever of intrinsic righteousness, equitable and immutable, embodied first in the moral perfections of the Heavenly Father and then in the universal and indestructible judgment of the right human conscience. But the ultimate standard of right is the mere will of each greedy and unrighteous creature. For this system, there is no morality to enforce duties or guarantee rights except the human laws, and these are merely the expression of the cravings of this aggregate of licentious, ruthless, selfish wills. That's basically what we have in much of our latest legislation since the 1950s in the United States, especially with divorce and family court law. It's a leviathan. It needs to be overthrown, and these tyrants thrown in jail. They enforce a tyrannical law which assumes no morality except their own human laws with no basis and reject the supreme creator of the universe for such laws. And he says, this reasoning, of course, makes the will of the majority supreme and says, vox populi, vox Dei, so voice of the people, voice of God in Latin. But it must be remembered that this majority is only the accidental majority mob in which the wicked will of each citizen is the supreme law. So that the God of Jacobinism, whose voice receives this sovereign expression, may at any time reveal himself as a fiend instead of a benignant, I think it means benevolent or heavenly Father. The practical government which results from this theory is simple absolutism, differing from the personal despotism of a sultan or a czar, only in this one particular, that its victims have that many-headed monster, the mob, for their master, always liable to be more remorseless and greedy in its oppressions than a single tyrant. To this deduction, history gives the fullest confirmation. The democracies infected by this theory have ever turned out the worst despotisms. Such was the government of the Jacobin Party in France 90 years ago. Again, he's writing this in the 19th century, guys. Expressly deduced from the social contract, and yet a government guilty of more oppressions, stained with more political crimes and murders of the innocent, more destructive of public and private wealth than all the despotisms of Europe together, annihilated in one decade 48 billions of francs of the possessions of the French people, and drenching Europe in a universal causeless war, and rendering itself so loathsome to the nation that it was glad to escape from it into the military despotism of Napoleon. The favorite motto of this democracy is liberté, égalité, fraternité, of which the practical rendering by the actions of the Jacobins was this: liberté, license to trample on other people as they chose; égalité, similar license for the outs when they could become the ins; fraternité, all brother rogues. So all the worst oppressions and outrages experienced by the people of the United States have been inflicted by the same Jacobinism masquerading in the garb of republicanism. Do y'all want to comment, or you want me to continue?
No, I do want to comment.
Well,
Liberté, égalité, fraternité. Isn't that modernism in some form? Isn't that where this all starts? Where we're at? And last week, maybe I was onto something when I said the heresy of equality, which is egality.
yes. So what
I
you see
like it.
is this equality.
I just like exploring these ideas with you guys.
So the inversion of a hierarchy of this egalitarianism, Jacobinism, led to some of the most horrors and wars in history. And the latter form of this, which of course is like Marxist communism, and you have the horrors of Mao and Pol Pot, not to mention Stalin. You might say there's the H word, okay. I'm sure he had his problems as well, but it was nowhere near the horrors of this. And he was only able to have that power as ousting, in the first place, the proper hierarchy of the empire that preceded him, which was pretty much destroyed in World War One. Where in World War One, in the name of democracy, especially after World War II, they dismantled empire and hierarchy to establish a safer world. But actually, what happened is more atrocities in the name of democracy or egalitarianism or equality transpired.
Well, the things were so bad under the French Revolution, so unpredictable, so unjust, so just terrible, that people said, oh, yes, Napoleon, great. He's going to be a supreme leader. Whatever he does
Mhm.
is better than what we got.
Why do you think the H word got in power in Germany?
You mean it wasn't an accident?
No. You had all these crazies, the communist Antifa, and they're transing or transforming in the Weimar Republic and all the other crap. And the people had enough. Yes, we'll take the guy with power.
We need a boss. I don't care how bossy he is, but enough of this the tyranny of the mob.
Well, we
And
keep coming
unfortunately, in
back.
America, we have
Well, yeah, exactly. We keep coming back to this idea that, oh, we can just vote our way out of it. No, you can't, because it's the tyranny of the mob.
you can't.
You know, we've talked about IQ before. Okay. And we've talked. Okay, Nick. Yeah. We've talked about how, there aren't actually that many intelligent people who are intelligent enough to run something as complex and as important as a civilization. There's a guy, Devin Erickson, you've heard me talk about him. He actually writes about this on Twitter quite a bit. And what he says, and I thought this was fascinating, is that in Roman and Greek culture, when they had their stable empires, voting was not a public responsibility. Voting was considered an office, and those who were elected to vote were considered officers. So the idea is that you would get people of sufficient intelligence to do the work, and that they would not, and then there would not be every one vote one person, because the reality is that if I give every person with an IQ of 95 the right to vote, that person will vote themselves, the public treasury, 100 times out of 100, 1,000 times out of 1,000, and they will always outnumber the vote of the person with 130 IQ who understands the future forward consequences of doing so, right? So no, you cannot have a stable system with universal suffrage. It's not actually possible. We tried it.
Happy would agree.
We've tried it for the past 100 years or so, and it has been a giant fucking fail for the past 100 years. And Devin Erickson is and other guys are looking at ways to go ahead.
So this really pissed me off. Speaker Johnson, right?
Mike Johnson, yes.
That's the Speaker of the House, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, he's trying to get everybody to calm down and talks about the peace and not and the basically to everybody calm down, and he's gonna. And I was basically, F you, we're not your damn experiment. How about you do your dang job and wield the sword and rectify the situation? You can't vote, guys. They're going to do nothing. And we're just an experiment to them.
Well, this is a little bit off, but it's a short point. Dabney talks about patriarchy. Patriarchy is not the rule of men. Men are half the mob. No, patriarchy is the rule of fathers. It's an office. Whether you say it's a father or an office or a firstborn, generally, if it's firstborn, it's passed from father to firstborn son. But the firstborn son doesn't assume the patriarchal role until the death of the father. Or if you say, well, it's all men. Okay, fine. It's all men. But it's fathers, which generally means it's older men who are probably 35 on up. So, whether these older men, 35 and older, are intelligent or not, they have gained some wisdom by experience. And so there is some mitigating influence on their irrational passions. What do you say about that, Plutarch?
Yes, to an extent. There is a lower bound on where men can do that. And I do think that I think that the way the founding fathers had it set up was actually a pretty good recognition of that. So the idea that you had to own property means that it puts an unintentional, as in IQ wasn't even a thing that they knew about back then, but it puts this unintentional floor on the IQ of the people involved in voting. And the reason that's necessary is because there is an IQ below which even lived experience is not sufficient. They're just so high time preference that they can't connect the dots.
But
But
if you had to be a property owner, generally took you some time to accumulate the resources to buy the property, and you had to have some level of intelligence to get there. So, for most part, you couldn't really be a property owner until you were at least 30 years old in the majority of cases.
yeah,
So, there's lots of ways to approach the same general solution.
well, the same general solution is no, not everyone gets the right to vote. Sorry, you aren't qualified for it. And that's a hard thing to tell people is look, it's okay that you're not qualified to take on this duty, this responsibility. And it feels really bad. Greg Gutfeld did this great monologue earlier this week, and he made this point about he was talking about Democrats. Is it the reason that they behave the way they do is because if they didn't do the thing where they try and he was talking about the both sidism. Well, we have to come together and it's a both side. If they didn't do that, then they would have to go the intellectual the ones with the intellectual capacity to do this, they would have to say, are we the bad guys? They would have to look at what's going on and go, oh crap, are we the bad guys? And then they would have to go, shit, we probably are the bad guys. And that means that they would then have to let go of some piece of their ideology, and they can't do it. Well, it's kind of the same thing here. At some point, you have to tell a person that they are not intelligent enough to hold this office, the office of voter in this case. And that sucks to have to tell people that they can't handle it.
In other words, get it through your head. All men were not created equal, and you are not equal to everyone else. So let your superiors do the big lifting and take the responsibility and make the decisions. And you know what? That applies to me too. In my job, I'm an inferior. I have superiors. So, what is my role? Shut up, do my job, and follow their orders. That is my role.
Yeah, yes, and people, you can expand on that. Okay, sometimes we have people called managers. Their job is to tell other people what to do, but guess what? That manager has a boss, and his job is to do what he's told to do. Oh, but I'm a CEO. I own a business. Yeah, I have bad news for you there. Your customers are your boss. Everyone has someone that they are accountable to, that they are responsible to.
And you know what? This is the way the military works. So you're in a command structure, and let's say your immediate uh, boss is shot. Okay, well, you step up and you take over. And it's kind of like that. Oh shit! I don't want his job. I don't want all that responsibility, but I got to do it. No man, well, I shouldn't say it that way. Some men want that. But no sane man relishes being thrust up because his commanding officer was killed and being thrust into that level of responsibility. A smart man does not want that, but he will do it. It's his duty. So this seeking of equality is just bogus. If people stop to think about it, equality is a crock of shit. I don't even want equality. I will. You know what? You have the authority and the responsibility, and by all means, you can have extra privileges because I don't want the burden.
Hey, Steve, you know who else doesn't want equality?
Who?
Every single feminist who says, I am not going to work. I am not going to stay at home and be a wife. I'm going to go work at a corporation and that will make me equal. How's that working out for you for you ladies over there?
But they say they want equality. I'm saying I don't want equality. They want equality of rights, but not equality of duties or obligations or responsibilities. I'm saying, hey, I'll give up the rights. I don't want the duties, but I'll do them if I have to.
Right. Well, actually, it's that second part that's the difference. The women want the rights. They want the benefits. It's the I will do my duties if I have to, that the women recoil in horror and dismay that they might be required to do something. And I personally think women are built that way. I think that's by design. And that's probably a good thing. Okay. So, you know, we've tried this experiment now since since the Seneca Falls Convention, but really since the 1920s, and thrusting women into politics where they want all the rights of being a politician, but when the hard decisions come up, they vote present, I swear. Or they vote against the hard decision. That's the one that really bothers me. This country has a long list of things that we need to be working on, and we're not working on them because the women keep saying, no, you can't do that. I'm not interested in women who say no. The world is awash in women who, nagging, bitter women who say no to everything. We've got plenty of that. I need some solutions, people, because we're dying out here. And you women with all your empathy can't seem to realize that's what's happening. I'm not interested anymore.
Well, let me tell you a personal thing here about equality. I've said this before. I'm a truck driver. I'm a teamster. I'm a union guy. So our union steward, which is the head of the local, we got 14 drivers in Fargo. So he's the guy who represents the drivers to management. Well, he had a health issue. Looks like he's not going to be back. So we have a vacancy, and we got a negotiation for a contract coming up next year. So we need another union steward. I can do the job. I don't want to do the job. Okay, here's a benefit. I don't have to pay union dues. So I save like $100 a month in union dues. But then I got to deal with all, any grievances and all the stuff. And, there's responsibilities and duties there. I don't really want the job, but when I look around, who is most capable of doing the job and representing us in this next round of negotiations? Reasonable, understanding what the focus is, representing the driver's interest versus the warehouse guy's interest versus the guys in the, down in Minneapolis who are going to be in the same bargaining unit. Yeah, I'm probably the best guy to do it, but I don't want to do it. So, because you know what? It's easier to just sit back and let things happen. Okay, this is the dilemma that all kinds of men have and have to deal with. Generally, it's my observation that the guys that want the position are not the guys that you want to have the position.
Yeah, I mean, what's the old saying? Anybody who you would want for the job of or anybody who you would who would run for the job of president is somebody you would never want for the job.
Yeah.
I see Nick. Looks like Nick's battery may have finally died.
Okay.
So, oh man, we've been at this for 2 hours already. My goodness.
Yeah, it's about time to wind down. Hey, guess what? Tomorrow morning, okay, I have to go to work early. But tomorrow morning, guess who's going to serve me breakfast?
Well, you
And I go in at about 3:30 tomorrow morning. Who's going to be there serving me breakfast tomorrow morning? It's going to be my boss.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay, because this is basically Driver's Appreciation Week.
Oh,
So once a year, my boss is a great guy. Okay, this isn't just a once a year thing. Well, he only does this once a year. But in order to show his appreciation for his workers, his drivers, he comes in and he'll show up. He's on his way there right now. He'll be there cooking by 11 p.m. because there's some guys that leave about that time for their night trips. And he'll be cooking breakfast from 11 p.m. to probably 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And he's the boss. Now, okay, these are some of the duties that come with being in charge of things. It's not always fun. You do your duty. And, okay, I guess you could call this true servant leadership.
Okay, guys, I'm going to put Dabney on here for inequality before I get kicked off again. This internet is absolutely atrocious. Hold on. Share screen. There you go. It says, there are countless natural differences. Okay, so one half of them it differ by nature from the other half in the essential qualities of sex. There are countless natural differences of bodily organs, health, and stature, natural faculties, and moral dispositions. Naturally, no two men are equal in that sense. It's impossible that Congress could have intended that sense after After that, every one of the 13 states then legalized African slavery. Not a single one granted universal suffrage even. No application was made by any of those states of the supposed Jacobin principle at that time to remove these inequalities of franchise. Were these men so nearly idiotic as to propound an assertion in which they were so glaringly refuted by their own actions at home? This extreme claim of equality is false and iniquitous. For out of the wide natural diversities of sex, of powers, and of character must arise a wide difference of natural relations between individuals and the state. To attempt to bestow identical franchise upon all thus appears to be unjust and indeed impossible. It is but a mockery to say that we have been bestowed a given franchise upon a person whom nature has disqualified from using it. It is equally futile to boast that we lift all men to the same identical relations when their natural differences have inexorably imposed on them other relations. Of what avail would it be to declare that all women have the same?
Oh, we lost Nick again.
Yeah. Man, he was on a roll too.
He's probably still rolling.
Probably.
Intelligent, wise men.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, were you? Oh, shoot. What happened? What was I cut off?
You cut out for a bit.
Where?
For about 30 seconds.
Okay. He says the extreme claim of equality is false and iniquitous. For out of the wide natural diversities of sex, of powers, and character must arise a wide difference of natural relations between individuals and the state. Did y'all get that?
Yeah.
Steve, you read it. That might be easier.
Well, now that it's up on the screen, I have to pay
Shit.
attention now. Where are we at?
To attempt
Just
to
started.
bestow.
To attempt to bestow identical franchise upon all thus appears to be unjust and indeed impossible. It is but a mockery to say that we have bestowed a given franchise upon a person whom nature has disqualified from using it. It is equally futile to boast that we lift all men to the same identical relations when their natural differences have exorably imposed on them other relations. Of what avail would it be to declare that all women have the same natural right with myself to wear a beard and to sing bass when nature has decided that they shall not? What is the use of legislating that all lazy fools shall acquire and preserve the same wealth with the diligent wise men? The law of the universe ordains that they shall not. I urge further that the attempt to confer upon all the same franchises to which the wise and most virtuous are competent upon the foolish and morally incompetent is not only foolish and impossible, but is a positive and flagrant injustice to all of the worthier citizens. For when the unsuitable powers are abused by the unworthy, all suffer together. The little children of my family have not an equal right with their parents to handle loaded revolvers and lucifer matches. Scroll, please. Can you
Watch,
scroll it, Nick?
He's cut off again. Yep, there he goes.
Oh. If we were so foolish as to, I don't know. What?
And now we'll have to wait for
We
him
were
to come
getting
back.
into foolishness.
Well, there is plenty of foolishness out there in the world as it is. So, yes. Oh, poor Nick. He's going to be raising hell at the front desk after this.
He's frustrated.
Yeah.
But let's talk about equality. I really would like someone to come on here and refute our claim that equality, the blind application of equality, even the informed application of equality, is a bad thing. I don't see any good coming from application of equality. Hierarchy is a much better model.
Not only is hierarchy a much better model, it's the only one that's been proven to work out through history. It's just I've gotten to the point with this where I'm just like, yeah, we tried your ideas. They didn't work. And they always come back. Well, they always come back with a no true Scotsman argument. Well, we just haven't been pure enough in our application of the ideas. And then I point to, the Long March and, the Great Leap Forward and, Stalin's purges and all of that. And I just go, you don't understand. There's not enough human technology in the world to make a human pure enough to be able to do what you're trying to do. Because what you are trying to do is to say that humans are not human. This is actually the root of the transhumanist movement. Is that humans can be so augmented with technology of human invention. And again, I'm using the Greek term technology here, not referring to necessarily electronics, but the idea of human invention. The idea that humans can invent their own way, that an imperfect being can invent its own way to perfection is absurd. It's a logical nonsense. Yeah, Chief, exactly. Anything theoretical always works in theory.
Okay, here's what I have learned from history. Advancement, and I'm talking technological advancement, innovation, happens from a very select few number of men. It's like 99% men. And I think they're 99% of them are probably above an IQ of 130. Might actually be of a higher IQ than 140. Those are the guys that come up with the great ideas that advance things. So when you implement Common Core, No Child Left Behind, to try to bring up the laggers, that's not okay. Good. I'm all in favor of that. Great. But if you want to bring everybody to average, you're going to stunt the top performers and you're going to stunt your society. It's more important to allow them the freedom to do that. So, in other words, diversity is not your strength. Never was. It's the don't bring everybody down to the middle. No, because you're stifling your society. What are we trying to do? We are trying, men have too much power. We need to bring the men down and elevate the women so the women have more power. And how's that working out from a societal standpoint? How's your birth rate doing? How's your marriage rate doing? If it's working, I'll see it in the statistics and I'll see it all around me. It's not fucking working. Pull your head out of your ass.
Yes, but pulling their head out of their ass would mean admitting that not only were they wrong, but the things that they've done in the pursuit of this might actually have been evil, and they are not worthy of the power they have vested in themselves. And they really don't want to give up the power they've vested in themselves. I'm going to keep coming back to that. I'm just going to keep hammering on that point.
Okay. We're already seeing signs of this. I watched Legion of Men YouTube channel. He was talking about how bad the economy is getting. And he used a lot of TikTok videos of women who'd been laid off from their job, applying for other jobs and not getting hired and lamenting about it. Oh my God, I can't get a job. I have this degree and I was a program manager, marketing, blah, 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 services and customer relations, and I can't get a job now and I'm so overqualified. And yeah, I think this is hilarious. Yes, yes, there are men in that situation too.
Actually, to that point, there's the system has worked overtime to try and fire men out of these jobs. But the dead weight problem on the DEI side of the equation is it's just so heavy. The weight of it, the drag of it on the business is so great that they can't not fire some of these DEI hires. They have no choice.
Okay, and it's hurting men. I understand that. It sucks. It's really bad. But men will generally find some humility and they'll move down the scale into a different job. They're more resourceful. They may even move into a blue collar job. Just because that's the way things are. And they will survive because men are survivors. Women, on the other hand, are just going to lament and complain. Okay, a man who was a programmer can he go get a job as a warehouse worker?
Sure.
If someone will hire him? Okay, he's going to have to humble himself to do that. But can he do it? Can he become a truck driver? Can he become a construction worker? Can he say, damn, you know what? This sucks. I am going to become a heavy equipment operator. And I'm going to go and say, you know what? I don't know shit about this, but I want to learn. Will you teach me? Will you hire me? I think I can do the job. And now he's got to get up and be on the job site at 6 a.m. and work till 4 p.m., whatever, 10-hour days. He can do that. Now, can you imagine any woman saying, oh, I used to be the director of customer relations at blah, blah, blah. Now I want to go out and learn how to drive a bulldozer.
Lol. Women don't say shit like that. They just don't.
No. So, okay, it sucks if you're one of those guys, but you know what? You will find a way. Women, oh man, it's going to be tough because they want that office prestigious job. Their identity depends on it. They don't have a man to take care of them. And when things get tough, and all of a sudden they don't have rent, and they don't know what the fuck they're gonna do. So we are seeing a reversion to kind of a hierarchy model. Equality isn't going to do you any good when the economy turns down. And it's turning down right now as we speak. And even Plutarch knows this, and he'll probably touch on this next week. It sucks for you programmers too, because they are coming for you. Because yeah, you're productive, you're making good money, you're I think you should have your job. But you know what? They can hire an H-1B person to come in, do your job for probably somewhere around half your salary, and then they become a slave because they can't complain, they can't refuse, they can't do diddly squat, because if they lose their job, boom, you're out of here. This is the injustice of our system. And you know what? It's kind of like the tyranny of equality. Oh, yes, we need to be nice to everybody. Well, this is what we get.
Yep. For Dabney, I think basically what that's kind of where I was going to conclude, where Steve was talking about we're not equals. There's different sexes, different strengths, different even intelligences. Not everybody is fit to vote. Not everybody's smart enough to make or moral enough to make the right decision. Plus, immigration, I think, should also disqualify most of the people. Recent immigrants, I don't think, should be able to vote or hold office in the United States because they're voting for their own interests, a lot of times their own countries, like that stupid Somalian that should be deported.
Yeah,
You guys
Nick, you
there?
probably also have the radical opinion that dual citizens should not hold office.
Absolutely, they should not. They're compromised.
Nick, that's not very
Yeah,
fair of
equality.
you.
I don't give a shit.
No,
Too
I don't.
bad.
I don't really understand why a dual citizen of Sweden and the US should be compromised, and why you would have a problem with them.
I noticed how you chose Sweden, right? Instead of another. That holds a lot of
'Cause
offices.
I had an argument like this with a friend of mine.
Oh,
And he said there shouldn't be a problem. So
when all our
yeah,
politicians have to wear the small caps and do something to a stupid ass wall. All the way across the world. Yeah, you could put two and together. You know who I'm talking about.
I mean,
But
one
it's
thing
not just them.
well,
To be fair, it's not just them.
oh, well, you should see some of the shit that goes on with bowing to China too.
Exactly.
Different politicians, same problem. But our politicians should never be bowing to any other nation. That, in my opinion, is high treason, but that carries certain consequences that are culturally repugnant today. And
oh, absolutely. That's why I bring up those Swedish American politicians. They should not be allowed because they have allegiance to Sweden and the United States. Doesn't
Correct.
matter what other country it is. Sorry, that makes no sense. You are not qualified because you, when you're a leader, a politician, a representative, you are representing the interests of the populace here. You only have allegiance to the populace here. You have no other foreign ties. This seems like common sense.
Well, common sense isn't exactly very common these days, Steve. But and to be fair, there are people, younger people mostly. Basically, when I say younger people, anybody under the age of 45, who are interested in that. And when you see legislation pop up, there was a legislator talking about this. He has a law that he's trying to push that addresses some of this. And he is my age, Nick's age, not an old guy. And the thing that really sits just sideways in my craw is the fact that young men have to come up and say, no, this is what we should be doing. And the old men are shouting them down because the old men would lose access to fucking money if this guy's law passes. This is yet another perversion of the hierarchy. It should be the old men telling the young men, no, don't be stupid. Don't go bow down to China, you know? But no, the young men have to tell the old men that the old men are being stupid. Why is this okay? Why do we accept this?
Well, I think the old men have forgotten their duties. They've forgotten the concept of duty and stewardship, and therefore they're unqualified to lead. And it's the young men who recognize that. So the young men with the power and force of will, it's their time. And it's always been this way. When the king or the leader is weak, morally weak, the young men overthrow the leader and take over. It's the way it is in the animal kingdom. You know what? The old lion does not hold that position by being stronger. He holds that position by force of will and wisdom and knowing how to intimidate and all those things. And when he loses that, you know what? He deserves to be overthrown.
Yeah, Chief, you're right. Those that have success in a paradigm will be reluctant for a different one. You're right. Even if that paradigm is rapacious to the people that they are supposedly serving. But as Steve says, eventually some uprising against them will happen and they will get thrown out. You know, we're gonna talk about the concept of uprising next week a little bit because it touches on some things that we're going to be talking about next week. But the basic idea is that people the basic idea that people will rise up against weak and morally feckless leaders is absolutely true throughout history. It just never happens the way people want it to happen. That's what we'll be talking about.
And it's so silly that the old men who are in there, who are self-serving, not making the right decision to govern with stewardship and legacy on behalf of the people, for the good of society. No, they're in it for themselves, for the money. What the hell are you doing? You're an old man. Your life is set. You know what? More money is not going to change your life in the least. You can't spend the money you already have. I don't care if you have $100,000. Then you have a low expectations, certain lifestyle. Or if you have 1 million, or if you have 10 million, whatever it is, you reach 50, 60 years old. You don't need to double and triple and quadruple your income to have ungodly more money, which is really what we're talking about with the politicians. It's not going to make any difference in your life. What the hell are you doing? If you really believed in God, you know that your salvation, your eternal life, is worth way more than any temporal pleasures on earth. And you're selling your soul for something that's not even going to be any benefit to you on this existence level. Are you fucking nuts?
Nuts? No. I actually argue that they are doing for themselves the very best that they can do, and this is where I break very hard with the Nietzschean aspect of the manosphere, because only Nietzscheanism can only create this problem. Nietzscheanism is the maximal superlative expression of what these men are doing, because it is the best thing for them to do. It is the strongest. They are the biggest dog. They can make rapacious amounts of personal gain on the backs of the people that they rule over, because that is what a good little Nietzschean does. Until the people they rule over realize that they are collectively far stronger than the Nietzschean, who has to do everything on his own, or within small groups of like-minded exploitable people. The Nietzschean mindset is incredibly exploitable. In fact, it's almost trivial to exploit how they think. But eventually the people, one of the things that you learn in self-defense and shooting self-defense classes is that the bullet is the greatest equalizer ever developed by humanity. There's no amount of muscle mass you can gain that will stop a bullet.
Unless you're really fat, right?
And the bullet's anemic, yes. Nick. But okay, so but I can find a bullet that no amount of human fat can stop, because if you were that fat, you would be dead. So eventually what always happens is Nietzscheanism finds its inevitable conclusion in the fact that you are not, despite all your money and power, the most powerful force on this planet. You're just not. And that's actually part of another little bit of what we're going to look at next week. Not entirely sure what the title will be yet, because it's my notes are kind of a grab bag of different things. Maybe the title is just "Now What," but that's kind of where we're headed with next week. Is okay?
Well,
now what?
It's kind of our take on the post Charlie Kirk assassination world. Where are we going?
Yeah, and there's a lot of different things in that question.
So we're not focusing on the event as much as what happens next, and not who did what, who's at fault. It's like, what are the people saying? What's the sentiment of the crowd? What's history say happens at these kind of things? What do we have to be aware of to be on the lookout for in the future?
Yep. I've got links to some history articles here. I've got Twitter posts dealing with the changes. It's going to be a wild one. So we'll have fun next week, at least.
This channel will never, ever be popular. We're not going to ever get thousands of viewers. I don't see it, because we're talking about things way out in advance. We're developing ideas, and then our few listeners are hearing those ideas. It percolates down, and it goes down eventually. If they gain popularity, and if they're worthy, it'll go down to the masses. Charlie Kirk was a moderate. Keep that in mind. He had millions, he influenced millions of people because he was a moderate, and he was advancing his ideas, but his ideas came from others. And then it was percolating down. People like us, and we're like 3, 4, 5 levels removed, whatever the hell. Maybe I'm blowing smoke at you. But eventually, if it has merit, it percolates down and eventually becomes mainstream. But we are not mainstream. We never will be. We don't want to be mainstream.
Mainstream means you have to guard your words more carefully. This actually gives us the ability to think freely without restraint. I mean, obviously, we do have to censor ourselves for the YouTube algorithm and whatnot, but so they don't literally kick us off. But that's about all we'll do. We have the ability to think freely, to go wherever the facts lead us. And sometimes they lead us in places we don't want to go. Next week is a little bit of, I don't want to go there. But we have to go there. Because while the specifics of the future may not be knowable, the general shape of things to come, you can kind of see it already forming. And whether or not our specifics are right or not, I don't care, because when we're helping you guys, and we're talking to guys, it's everyone wants specifics, but if we can get you at least pointed in the general direction, you'll be far more ready to help out when the time comes. You'll be able to make the right decision. You won't be quite so surprised when that day finally comes. And to me, that's the best I can do. And frankly, I think, even if you have a 60% chance instead of a pure coin toss, I think we're doing a lot better. as a culture, society, civilization. If we can get to the point where we're 60% instead of just 50%, could go either way. So that's how I view it. That's why we occasionally do these episodes. If you haven't watched our episode that we did about this time last year on Civil War, please go watch that in advance, because we will be referring to that, at least for parts of the episode. But yeah, that's next week. Nick, you still there?
Yeah, my internet's just absolute crap today. Dabney's against equality. Okay.
Hey,
You can read
Nick,
you can read it in many of his works. So I recommend that.
Nick can come back and do the conclusion of this stream in the future. He probably will.
Yep. I don't have much to say before I get kicked off the internet again.
No.
At the end, it's supposed to be
You know
about
what?
quality. It's not. It's inequality in different type of lack of quality in.
I might have to go back and rewatch that stream we did a year ago, so I know what I said.
Yeah, that's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, I'll remember.
We said a lot of shit, and I remember it pissed off some of our commenters at the time, because we said things, and then I'm actually going to refer to that specifically, because
Okay.
there's this problem where people want a certain outcome because they think either that outcome would be advantageous to them or that it would achieve their desired goal. And I was chatting with my dad about that. And
We
he's
don't
like,
live in fantasy
yeah,
land.
exactly. God doesn't give us the outcome we want. He gives us the outcome we need. And it's probably not that outcome that people are rooting for. So yeah, it's going to be fun. So yeah, come back next week. We have no idea what the stream on Saturday will be, except for that I will probably be there. So because somebody needs to save poor Nick and Steve from having to absorb all of my wife's words. Yeah, she's in the chat.
She did a really good job in the last two streams, especially the last one.
Oh, good.
We made her read all her slides and go through it. She wanted to kind of defer. No, you do it. You lead it. And she does a fine job.
So no idea what it'll be. We'll come up with something. Next week for Wednesday, we do know what it'll be. We look forward to seeing you guys there for it. I guess we need to say the thing, like, share, subscribe if you want to hear more, all that. Any other words, gentlemen, before we sign off this evening?
Nope. Keep paying attention to the things around you. Think, and for clarity, you need to learn more about history.
Oh, that's always good advice. All right, Nick, anything else, or are we not going to push you internet anymore?
Just read Dabney. He's really a brilliant guy. Read Dabney. There you go.
All right. We'll see you all next week. Later.
There was a firefight! Son of a bitch!